Welcome everyone to our final edition where we talk about the new Tractatus by Bruce Fleming. We're talking about section 7 and maybe summing up the book a little bit. As the book is summing up everything, we shall sum up the book.
Wow.
So, yeah, might be a difficult task, but anybody have any initial thoughts on 7? How do we want to attack this? I'm sure you had many feelings while reading 7. The new 7 is about arguments. Why do we argue, and how do you win arguments? So yeah, you're going to learn everybody how to win arguments and make friends and influence people. No, you're not.
Oh, something along those lines.
Something along those lines. Thinking from a very Wittgensteinian perspective, this is how arguments are.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm sure you're going to be the life of the party. Hey, there's contingent and necessary things. Did you know that? So how do you want to cover this? What do you just want to say? I'd be interested to hear, what do you think his argument is in the end here? Why do we argue, and how do you win arguments?
So we talk about why do we argue first, then?
Yeah. Let's talk about why do people argue? What is all this talking about, this conversing? Why is TJ always shouting at me on YouTube? And what's going on? What's this argument about?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think he really just straight. The point is, he says very straight at 7.03, arguments are attempts to change the world. I think he takes that quite literally, right? And I'm sure he's linked this into the idea of control somewhere along the line too, but in a more local level, all arguments are attempts to change the world, according to him.
Yeah, you know what? I don't disagree with that. I know, like it's annoying when people get angry with you for bringing up arguments, and you're like, man, I'm just asking questions. But you know what? Asking questions is an attempt to change the world, and let's not just BS about it. We're talking about it for a reason, and that is to change the world, hopefully for the better. So I actually, as much as it annoys me sometimes, yeah, I like that point.
Yeah.
I don't see any problem there.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. My only kind of question about this is kind of semantical, only within the confines of this book, like where he says, the total sum of all arguing positions is the world, and then arguments are attempts to change the world. Those two, just on a semantical level, don't seem to gel together. But I understand that, if he'd used a different word, it would have been no problem. His points would have been the same. That's just a very minor caveat.
I want to throw in what
the point is good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. I do want to throw in one point also myself on this. Maybe this will lead into our next point here, but yes. And I'm with you, Dustin. I'm with you on this, but when he says things like this, I kind of want to
push back
a little. When he says, like at 7.25, he adds, arguments take place as alternatives to other things, such as battles or hiring a hitman. They are signs of restrictions on action in a social system. Okay.
Yeah. And also, I just want to say 7.16 too. Arguments fail to happen if one retreats. And so, basically, when there are certain restrictions in place and you don't retreat, then arguments take place. So please continue from there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I get this. Like, maybe this is going to speak all as much about my psychology as about what Fleming's getting at here. But let me just charge into this and see what happens. I mean, I guess the point is to say arguments are attempts to change the world. It is correct, but like, I guess I just want to add on to that. That is not the only point. Is not to change the world, right? I mean, otherwise, arguments could be replaced with guns, right? If the only point was to change people, right? What you could just point a gun to somebody's head and say, "Do it," right? Yeah. And I mean, and the point is, like, I mean, sometimes that's what you want to do, right? That's true. Sometimes that is what you want to do. You get to put a gun to the guy's head and you say, "Change, or you're dead." Right, but I mean, I do think there's a zone of arguing whose point is not only to change the world, but to change the world in the right way.
All right.
Yeah.
Though, well, if I were to try and attack this point, what I would say is actually what you're doing here is you're just kind of chasing your tail in circles. Here as what just happened here.
Good question. Okay, great.
Okay, whew. So you're still alive. You're just a black reverberating circle. That's better than let it go, let it go.
I'm still here, even in spirit when I'm not. I'm haunting YouTube all the time.
Yeah, our first video started with problems. Our last video will end with problems on Bruce Fleming.
You spend your life in error and in problems. Hey, we learned something. We learned that from this book. You got to expect rocks on the stream. All right, so let's get back to where we were.
Sorry, yes. Because if I were to rephrase his initial arguments are an attempt to change the world. Well, just tweaking that a little bit, saying arguments are an attempt to exact a specific change in the world.
But that's not enough for me.
Well, really, so
Well, I mean, it depends on what you mean by a specific change. Like, for example, if you mean like arguments are attempts, if I want to get Billy from point A to point B, and I argue with him that point B is better to stand at than point A, I mean, do you want to say like specific change? That's the specific change, or the specific change is I affect Billy's reason, which is why he moves from point A to point B.
I would say you're kind of going to include not only from point A to point B, but everything that comes along with that. You could say that you have two options to get Billy from point A to point B. One is to convince him through argumentation, and the other is to threaten him with a gun. But the change you want to enact is not only getting him from point 1 to point B. It's, in this case, getting him from point 1 to point B and not having him call the cops when you get home. In that case, that eliminates the gun option, and then makes you use the argument option.
But see, I guess my problem with that is that would entail that, like, provided this was a lawless land, pointing a gun to Billy's head and making him move to point B, and arguing with Billy and making him move to point B would be equivalent actions, and I don't think they are.
They wouldn't. Well, if you were to, maybe let's take the cops out and say your options were argue with Billy, or point a gun at him, and but you wanted to get him to point A and point B, and not perpetrate a cycle of violence. In that case, is the gun option is eliminated. So that in that way, the argument is directed at the change, and the change you're targeting is directly why you choose argumentation over this.
Because I want to change it in the right way.
Yeah, well,
which is me. Like, the point is not only to change, but to change Billy in the right way.
Then we're getting into, because I think there's some you'd be arguing that there's no time when you can't use. There's no time when you can use guns to change things in the world.
Maybe that would be the right way at that time.
Mm.
Right, but I'm saying, like, there's got to be a zone of argumentation that's. I mean, so maybe you're right. People argue all the time for lots of different reasons, and sometimes we're fighting wars, and sometimes I'm trying to get you out in front of that speeding train. In that case, I don't care. What you're telling to me. You're just delusional. I'm going to push you out of the way of that speeding train. But there is a zone of times where me forcing you to do it and me arguing with you and affecting your reason to do it, I would say, are not equivalent actions. There's got to be a zone for this. And that's why I said this is going to speak to my psychology as much as what Fleming's talking about, in the sense that, I mean, a large chunk of what we're doing in philosophy here, hopefully, is trying to motivate people with reason. I mean, it's not always going to be reason. That's one of the Fleming's points, isn't it? Like, you never quite are sure what did the motivating. If it was the argument was just the final push, it was the straw that broke the camel's back, or if it was just how beautifully the argument was put, or the tone of the voice. You never are quite sure what was the convincing factor, but I do want to separate out these two things. So I want to separate out the use of the gun and the use of reason as non-equivalent actions in some cases.
Well, I think that just that's okay. Of course, we're splitting straws here because we're all on the same page. But I would say that when you're using the gun, even if it's still getting Billy from point A to point B, you're still the reason why you chose the gun over the argument is because you're trying to enact a different change than when you chose to use the argument.
I mean, because I chose to change Billy by violence. You mean like that?
Well,
yeah,
because
but I just mean this sentence straight, this unaltered sentence. The point of arguments is to change the world.
Yeah,
right?
You do need some
You can change the world in multiple ways, right? You can change it via guns. You can change it via tanks, right?
Just to jump in here, isn't the prerequisite of that sentence the unspoken statement here is, think of the beginning of Plato's Republic, and this reminded me of this very much when Polemarchus said, "Come with us, Socrates," and he said, "What if I refuse?" And he said, "Well, we have more people than you. We'll just force you to come. We can just do whatever we like. We can use violence." Argumentation can only happen on the prerequisite that both people have agreed to set down on the table of reason. Right? That's the prerequisite of arguments, and if that prerequisite is met, then I would say arguments are attempts to change something in the world, right? But maybe I kind of feel like that sits beneath his statement. It has to be there, right? There has to be some belief in reason, whatever that be, for that society, whatever that may be.
Yeah, hence the board game analogy later on.
Yeah, so you got to sit down to the table of reason somehow.
Yeah, even if you're not talking to Polemarchus, who's threatening violence. People can easily just say, "Not doing it."
Yeah, that's another way to walk away or to retreat into belief, right? So somehow we've got these people set down on the table of reason, and then arguments, right? If we didn't agree to sit there, then arguments really would be pointless. They would be Socrates and Polemarchus just duking it out, and I'm sure Polemarchus would win. Socrates would just be dragged in there. So there has to be a kind of a this. You're right. This sentence did affect me a little bit. I was like,
I don't want to say it's all wrong either.
No.
I get where he's going with this.
It almost historically it feels right. There's people warring, and there's a social system, and then there's restrictions, so we can't force each other to do things. So we agree, okay, let's talk about why we should do this, as opposed to stabbing each other to do it, right? It seems historically kind of interesting. It's a nice thesis, but really, argument doesn't work without reason, or at least an agreed upon reason. So, let's move on from here a little bit. So I know, but this continues a little bit.
Yes.
To 7.31, which even more than 7.25 or whatever. Systems of ethics are attempts to avoid arguments.
Yeah.
Again, I get what he's saying. I get it. They're setting down these rules to keep people in line. You walk on the left side of the street or the right side, depending on where you live or something, if that's ethical. Or you don't do this, you don't have abortions, or you do have abortions, and that prevents arguments. It's kind of weird, though. Something seems, too all-encompassing here. First of all, we're ruling out virtue ethics at all. Virtue ethics don't avoid arguments at all. Virtue ethicists will be in arguments all the time, and that doesn't matter to them. They're not playing the game of social rule. It's a very kind of, interesting, almost kind of like Marxist control system that he's got with ethics, and maybe Nietzsche would be agreeing here too a little bit, that the morals are there to control the people. I don't know. Do you think systems of ethics are attempts to avoid arguments? In other words, to make an orderly social system? That alone? Yes or no?
Well, that alone. It depends on how microcosmically you want to look at this. Clearly, that the greater goal of ethical systems is, like I said, social order to have a functioning society. And I guess you could kind of zoom that way down and say, imagine two guys fighting on the street over who who is walking on the right side of the street, and somebody saying, okay, fuck it, let's just all vote to walk on the right side of the street so we can get on with our jobs. I mean, you can imagine it having sprung from that, but that's clearly not its sole or its ultimate purpose.
Right. I mean, it seems like ethical systems are reaching out to the good. Again, reason here comes back, right? It's reaching out to the good. I mean, then why would ethical systems compete? Why would people have differing ethical systems about the good? I mean, we could easily have an ethical system that avoided arguments that included slavery or the butchering of animals, the eating of meat, the exploitation of the weak. I mean, we have those now, and it's a perfectly legit ethical system. So it seems like ethical systems generally, or even utilitarianism, they're trying to reach out to the good. I mean, maybe I'm being naive here.
Yeah. I guess when I read that, the first thing that flashed in my mind was that some people come across, give a very kind of off the cuff, when they give off the cuff definitions of ethics, they say something along the lines of this, you remember what we talked about with Susan Wolf, right? Some people just kind of say, okay, you have your egoism, which you do all on your own, and then ethics is just about how to live with other people. That's all ethics is, a way to live in harmony with other people somehow, right? And it almost seemed like he just modified this a little bit and said that's the whole point of ethics, to kind of smooth over the social system so you can live as an individual but in harmony with the group.
I mean, to me it feels like a very cynical definition of ethics. I mean, a very cynical person might say this. Yeah, that's just the control system. And yet we have arguments over good ethics, right? I mean, I don't know. It doesn't seem like ethical systems are only there to avoid arguments. They're also reaching out towards the good. Otherwise, what are we arguing about all the time? Yeah. There's got to be something else there.
Well, of course, the reaching out to the good is kind of a higher or a function of rationality that you could argue we haven't had throughout all our history. So, perhaps back in the day, ethics were the primary function was just to solve disputes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Why don't we eat pork? Well, because we have a book that says we don't eat pork.
Yeah. This is what Nietzsche called the morality of mores or something, right?
Yeah.
This morality of custom that continues on. And I get it. I mean, and a cynic would definitely say, yeah, ethics are just systems of control. And sometimes they are. They really are, the morality of mores. However, it doesn't feel like that's all they do.
A little bit also reminds me of Socrates' project when he was walking around talking to people like Euthyphro and stuff, and these people did just kind of take this handed down morality and like, well, guess that's what you got to do. You got to do these are the laws. You got to do it. And Socrates was the first guy to hit him and say why?
Yeah.
Why? You never thought about this, did you? You never even imagined, this is Cephalus. He's like, well, I guess good is just giving back what you owe other people. And then his first question is what if somebody goes mad and he wants his sword back? I don't know, Polemarchus, take over, right? He just doesn't, he never hit it. He was just taking this top-down system, and he never really engaged in ethical thought.
Yeah.
No, I mean, oh, sorry, please.
Yeah, I was just thinking, and even if we just stay with Socrates here, it's kind of clear why these conflicts could, even in this Greek top-down system, some of these conflicts still appear. That's why Euthyphro existed.
Yeah. But I see what's happening. Fleming can't say this or do this because he wants to do something else here. He's going to assign these conversations to the eternal chess game.
Yeah.
This is what he wants to do, so he's not going to follow me. He's going to say he's going to call me naive, or he's just going to play this game here. This is the eternal chess game I'm engaging in. This game never ends, Dustin.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. Argue all you want. There's another move ready on the board. We could play this chess game forever. I'm sorry, you're not Lelouch. There is no checkmate here. Ready. And that's why he's not doing this here. Because for him, these conversations are something else, which we need to talk about. I think that's the most important thing here, is what he's up to. I want to give a different reading about what's going on in this chapter later. But is there anything? Should we move right up into? I mean, some of the key points here are like, arguments. He just goes around in 7.501. Arguments need never end.
Yep.
And if they do, we can never be exactly sure why they did. Were you convinced, or was it the tone of your voice? We'll never know. And then he says something interesting, like arguments can work like time bombs, which is pretty cool. Like you can hear them when you're a kid, and then you remember years back, and you can be convinced by them or something, which is pretty cool.
The Republic is like a time bomb.
It really is. The Republic is like a time bomb. Tractatus is kind of like a time bomb too.
Yeah.
It's Wittgenstein's time bomb.
Yeah, well, the philosophical investigations, I would say, are time bombing too.
Yes. Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, they are. As Nietzsche said, "I am like dynamite." Maybe he should have said, "I am like a time bomb." So,
clock on the dynamite.
Eventually, what he's gonna be doing by all these metaphors, right? Is okay. So, this is my understanding of what's going on in his head. Okay, so the world is made like this, and this is going to be a Wittgensteinian interpretation of the world. The world is such that there are things in the world. The things in the world are contingent upon the world. Anything contingent upon the world can change at any time. Nothing in the world is necessary. What's necessary is the way the world is itself constructed. And he's going to say this. What's necessary, the necessity in the world, whatever that is, which we can't talk about, really, except for whatever logic might be, that's unimportant. Talking about necessities in the world is useless, like he talked about in the first part of this book, right? So in other words, saying, well, one of the necessities of this world is that it's either raining or it's not. Oh, wow. Okay, well, we learned a lot. Thank you. Tautologies. And he's going to say anything necessary that we learn about the world, it's going to be exactly as useful as that. And everything else is going to be on the chessboard. And the chessboard is just going to keep on being rearranged and rearranged and rearranged. That's why there's always something ready on the board. There's always something that's going to be changed. And that's where this is heading, at least as far as I understand this argument. Because he's going to say, look, there is no such thing as certainty. Certainty doesn't exist in the world because you're in the world. Certainty might exist in the structure of the world, right? Logical necessity. But like I said, that doesn't matter. It's useless. So whatever certainty we get on the chessboard, it's just going to be basically what he said. I love what he said. Certain just means this thing is certain until and unless it isn't, which is funny. We remember the science chapter?
Yeah.
It's kind of like this. I remember and I think of it like this, like we don't know and can't know the difference between no further possible explanation and I don't know any further possible explanation. Right? We'll never that information will never come to us. So certainty will just be kind of a thing that's out there, and we'll never know. And the best we can say is, well, I think I'm certain, and that's it. So certainty is kind of a lost cause here. And then he goes on to blow up Wittgenstein on 7.9.
Yeah.
Tractatus was an attempt to stop argument and pin down the world and control the world, and that's why it failed. So finally he gets to the end of the book and he said Wittgenstein failed. And what did he fail to do? Well, he failed because he tried to pin down the world from inside of it. I mean, this is exactly what Wittgenstein himself might say you can't do. Inside the world, you can't pin it down. You can only do that standing outside the universe. And this is why the project is a failure. This is how I read the end of this book. What do you think? No objections? Yes or no?
This is the way I also read the end of the book. I mean, I think he thinks Wittgenstein almost saw this point too. That's why he said you have to throw away my propositions as nonsense. I kind of think that's where Fleming wants to take it, in the sense that you can't like be 100% certain that what you've got is you can't have captured the truth. You can't know because it just might come out that you're not.
And whatever is necessary, absolute, is useless.
Yeah, and that's not going to really help you with what you want to do. I think that's what he's after. I'm not sure how far I can go with that.
Can I put a better spin on this if no one else wants to? Jesse, have anything? Do you object to my reading of the book? Do you think it's right or wrong?
I think I object to your reading on the grounds that I think you should have read it in a pirate voice.
Arr! Arr!
You were certain
Don't
there was...
spin down the world. Arr! There we go. I did it.
All right, cool.
This is yet another way to argue. Instead of walking away, we argue in a pirate's voice. But I don't know. Like, this is my feeling about the end of the book, and I'm sorry, Bruce Fleming, if I got you wrong here. I think you're on this page, and I don't know. Sometimes I feel worried about attacking him a little bit because he feels like he expands so much more in his other books that I'm kind of like, okay, this is what you really wanted to say. So let's give him a break. Okay, let's just pretend his enemies are elsewhere. It looks like he's trying to confront maybe people like us, but let's look at him from as confronting other people. For example, what if we were to say he's confronting people like the analytical philosophers who say things like, language, that's interesting, but how can we even argue if we don't know how language works? Right? Like, how can we begin to do anything like what Plato does if we don't know what is? Right? And then he would say, I think, well, we were fine. Language either works or it doesn't. And even if you can't prove it does work, it does. Right? And we got along fine without your argumentations. Anyway, we can get on with the business of the world without having to define and prove that things that already are working, right? I mean, like, that's just a useless thing to do. So maybe part of this, because he does work in academia, and American academia. So the people he's with are not continentals. He's with a bunch of analytics who are kind of, I don't know, a little obsessed with language and epistemology problems. And he's probably rolling his eyes at Gettier cases. And he's saying, well, yeah, think of all your Gettier cases. But, I mean, just because we can't name every possible objection to, knowledge, and we can't have 100% knowledge, doesn't mean that we can't get the game going. Again, that goes down to the chessboard, right? I mean, like, well, yeah, I mean, maybe there's already a step waiting to play in the Gettier game of epistemology. Maybe we're never going to pin this thing down. But that doesn't mean we can't do anything. Maybe my positive interpretation with that would be, but we can still play the game. I mean, the what I want to add in this book is that there's still a reason to play the game. Don't walk away from the chessboard. In fact, like, the one thing that I didn't agree with is like, well, we're going to lose the desire to speak once we realize we can't pin anything absolutely down. And I want to say no, I don't. Just because, I mean, this is like the death of God for analytics or something. Oh my God. Like, I can't prove absolutely that, like, ethics are absolutely 100% true in every universe. Oh my God, well, what's the point of philosophy then? Well, I mean, I don't know. Who are you? What are you, like 12 or something? Right? I mean, like, is that the game we were playing? Is that what we really thought that, this is what frustrates me a little bit. So this is one of my first good readings of this. What do you think so far?
Oh, wow. I really like what your reading of this. Like, I kind of took this almost myself as, like, he really is talking to this kind of person, this person who wants, when they have an argument, they want to solve it for certain, right? This has been decided, right? We got to the bottom of it, right? And if we haven't gotten to the bottom of it, it's just nothing. And I guess he wants to say it's...
Yeah, like, look, I also want to say, like, fundamentally, as weird as this sounds, I think we are on his team. I mean, like, for example, I think we are fundamentally on his side. It's just that we don't put it in these ways. Like, I would be the first one to stand up and say, like we've said it before in our other videos about ethics, no issue is ever solved. Every issue is open to the future. Just like, remember moral luck? The past can change, the future can change the past. These issues are never decided. They're not pinned down forever and ever. The only person that wants to do that is, like he says, a proto-fascist. Or why Wittgenstein failed. And, we're going to be sitting on his side of the team when we're with Heraclitus and Nietzsche, and we're all kind of saying, look, these things can't be pinned down, and that's good. why would you want such a world that I don't know, we can just, I don't know, work it out like robots and we'll just be done with it, and like this is it, it's done, moving on, right? We solved ethics now and forever, because we are humans. We are things that change, right? As Schopenhauer would gladly agree, we're constantly changing. So our nature will change. So maybe ethics will change, but that's okay. The chessboard changes, new moves will be made. But again, what I don't like is this, I want to walk away from the chessboard crap.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to walk away from the chessboard. I don't care if I can't get 100% certainty. I want a world where good people can thrive. I want a world where slavery doesn't exist. And just because I can't prove 100% of a logical necessity that, I don't know, utilitarianism or consequentialism is the best moral view, I don't care. I'm still going to play that game, and I'm still going to use the best arguments. And I might not be able to pin it down to one square, but I sure as hell am going to try to get it in this region. And I'm going to try to make sure everyone else does, too, because I believe that's the good.
This is wow. Again, I really agree with what you said. This is kind of what worried me, and for example, in section 7.531, this is where I kind of jumped on this point a little bit. He says, no one can argue us out of a story such as that this and so happens when we die if it is correctly placed. That is the nature of its placement. Nothing proves it, to be sure, but nothing disproves it either. All right. I enjoy a bit of healthy skepticism, and you know what? In some ways, I really feel his point. Like some people you talk to, it's just like talking to a wall, right? They've just located this beyond argument. But this point demonstrates something to me anyway. It demonstrates like that's not all there is to it. Like so. Let's imagine this Mr. X, he placed his beliefs outside. He has a total God of the gaps argument. He says, like, well, my God is totally untouched by science. He sits aside the universe, and he has controlled evolution. He's this mystery, invisible hand pushing things along. He's guiding rocks and trees, and he's creating miracles through the natural laws. This God is totally untouchable, totally outside of all we have, right? So he believes in this God that it can't really be disproved by science because, like, he'll just claim all science done is the hand of God pushing things along, right? So, but there is still argument to be had here, right? We don't walk away from this point.
Don't you think those people are the ones that are doing it 7.16? They're retreating into belief, right? They're not sitting down at the table of reason. I mean, what I want to say to that statement is that was exactly what Christopher Hitchens said, which was that which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence.
Yeah, I mean this is kind of what I want to say too. I mean, like, and there's also, I guess the thing is, like, there's reasons why you believe this.
Yeah.
Are those good reasons to even postulate that there is this God of the gaps out there?
But don't you agree that there are some people that won't sit down to the table?
Exactly right. This is where I think he's right. That there are people who it's like a wall. It's like a wall. They refuse to discuss. But it's just this sentence, and he says, what? No one can argue us out of this story.
Mm-hmm.
That's the sentence that really argue, right? If we agree to sit down to argument, I think it might be possible to argue someone out of that story. Consider if they looked deep enough.
If the presupposition is that reason is underneath that table of argument.
Exactly. If that's the presupposition there, like, I mean,
if this guy's
not going to listen, I mean, if the guy's not going to listen, what's the point, right?
If he's just not going to listen, then
yeah.
So you might say that you can't argue him out of this position. All you can, you can lead that horse to water, but it's up to him whether or not he drinks it. So it's the fact that he's sitting at the table. At least he's willing to be shown what that watering hole is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just possible too, right? Assuming this guy's a rational guy, and he's willing to sit down and say, like, well, I guess I just kind of came up with this out of the blue. I have no real reason to assert it.
Yeah, I mean,
anything.
It's just a kind of tangent thing. Like, remember Sam Harris too often says he gets lots of letters from so-called believers that were convinced by his arguments, right? Lots of letters, and Dawkins too. Apparently, they get letters all the time from people that are convinced by argumentation. I don't know. I wonder if he's thinking of these people, or the ones that can't be convinced are, I don't know, the ones that use force.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of part of his idea of the social system, in the sense that, like, when he says the thing about the Gordian knot, like, thinking you have to solve the Gordian knot by argument is just ignoring most of life, right? You could just walk away from it. You can cut it with a knife, right? There's all sorts of things you can do with the Gordian knot. So we keep this kind of social structure in place to keep us all happy instead of cutting each other up with knives, right? Which is fine. That's good. I like that. But like, he's got this kind of he's got this doubt about what argument can do, like what you said about like walking away from the table. Like 7.1. Maybe I'm being too unfair, and I just might be. So tell me if you think I'm being unfair. 7.1. Reasons given for why X is or isn't Y. X isn't. Don't prove or disprove the contention, because either you accept that X is Y or you don't. Oh, wow. Okay, that's a pretty ground level statement. Yeah, that's true. Either you accept X is Y or you don't. So, I mean, I don't know. If one were to read this in a certain way, one might almost read it like, well, arguments don't prove anything. The guy's he's gonna either accept the argument or not. So what are you gonna do?
Right. Like that, you mean that the world of reason has been left out of here, is what you're saying.
He might be trying to get like at a deeper level, and I get it. I get what he's saying. Like, some people don't want to engage in rational argument. Yeah, that's true. That is totally true.
I think if we go back to our chessboard thing, by saying y equals x, let's say I want that's the point I want to make in this argument, and once I make that assertion, the ball is now in their court, right? And they can either A, accept it, B, make a counter move, or C, walk away from the table. Well, but it's still, it comes, no matter how spectacular my argument is convincing them that what X is what I is dependent upon them taking this first option. If not, if they walk away from the table, I'm done. And if they make a counter move, then I have to then now it's on my table. I have to somehow try and maybe I'll move my knight just to check them in that spot, so that I have to move closer to my X's Y spot in the little chessboard. But either through argumentation, I'm going to either slowly manipulate them into my position, the position I want them to be in, or vice versa. They might manipulate me into that position. But it's either, in the end, it will either come down to either of accepting the other point or walking away.
Yeah. I like that. It'd be great if someone made the world such a bad place that once he was killed. No. Yeah, I want to give him a break here, but the thing I don't like here is really this walk away from the table. What do you think about that? I just want to cover that quickly.
I mean, that's the point I don't agree with either. I mean, it almost feels like just because you can't get it down to 100% certain, then we're just going to kind of say, eh.
Yeah, do you honestly think he believes that? I can't believe he believes that. It's just judging from his own personal history, his confrontations with the military.
Yeah.
He can't possibly be like, well, anything goes, baby. He can't possibly believe it.
No, look at this is kind of where I think you have to look at the very last line of the book, because he's brought us on this journey where we realize it's all things we can't pin down, and we've decided to stop talking. But the desire to talk may come back again. So I think it's kind of like hinting at this fundamental drive to do this talking, in spite of the fact that we can't get that certainty.
I guess, can I throw in on this point, like what you said, Jesse? Maybe is he? I kind of, just this book overall, just taking a large view of this book, it seems like a lot of this book. It's difficult to see where Fleming is standing, because, like, remember I brought in his other book, like The Aesthetic Sense of Life and stuff, and Almost at times it feels like Fleming yearns to transcend the world. He admits this deep yearning to transcend the world, but in the other books he's kind of like, well, no, no, I want to have an aesthetic sense of life, which is in the middle, right? So it's with this book, it's really difficult to tell exactly where, what wavelength Fleming is dancing, but like, a lot of this book it seems to be like attacks on this kind of person, though, the person who wants to transcend the world. Right, and I guess this transcendent person, this person who wants to transcend the world, would be this 100% guy, and I guess he wants to leave him in the dust. So I don't know. That'd be my happiest reading. Like, this is an attack on all people who would like to transcend the world. But if you're not doing that, fine.
Yeah, or people that want to pin down the world, if you want to say that.
Yeah, which would be like there's that kind of becoming godlike, which would be like the transcendence from top down, or this certainty, right? This absolute certainty you could strive for in science. Right? With absolute control or absolute certainty, he had both of those, right?
I mean, wouldn't certainty follow from the quote unquote male perspective of action?
I think that's absolute control.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, isn't control for him? Isn't certainty a kind of control, or at least a forced attempt to pin the world down into this and this alone?
Good question, because and this is going to derail us a little bit, and I really have nothing to say on this, but so I kind of hesitate to bring it up even. Remember last video we were talking about, like, we had this big list of things about conservatives, and we were like, well, what about liberals? Remember that? And I was sitting there thinking about, well, what about liberals? And I was thinking, like, what if Fleming almost kind of wanted to say, like, I don't know how far you can go with this, but like, conservatives want this control, and liberals want this certainty. That's why he placed science in the liberal side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and belief in the conservative side, to this aim for control. He seemed to want to place this aim for certainty over on the other side.
Yeah, because I remember in his first book, like, he talked about the conservative grid versus the liberal grid, and he said, the conservative grid is way open, and so long as you're not getting out of your grid there, you're able to do whatever the hell you want within your wide open square. Whereas the liberal grid is very tight. Like, it wants to know kind of exactly what people are doing, orient them all in the direction of specific actions that are quote unquote right.
Can I just throw a gimon at that? I kind of a doubt at that. I mean, like,
please.
I mean, the kind of person that I would expect to be certain would be a Sean Hannity who says homosexuality is bad, and the kind of person that I would expect to not be that, it would be a liberal saying, "What do you know? You don't know anything. You don't know what's good or bad. That's why we have a liberal democracy, because you can't make those determinations."
True.
I mean, it seems like liberal democracy is a sense of. I mean, that's what feels so negative about liberal democracy. The entire project of a liberal democracy is, we don't know what's good.
See, this is why I didn't want to bring this up, because, like, he talked about how the conservatives want this universal action, like X, thou shalt not X, is a conservative pronouncement, and everyone must conform to this. Every single person. It's God's will that you shall not be a homosexual, whatever, right? So they have this. Everyone follows this certain straight line, but the liberal had this kind of like, everyone has their own particular set of beliefs. But I don't know. I was kind of thinking of, and wow, I really do not want to drag us too long here, but I was kind of thinking of like stereotypes, just stereotypes here, like the stereotypical liberal cultural relativist, right? Or even individual relativist, and it's right for me, and that's right for you, right? And that's right for America, but that's right for Japan.
But it sounds like what they really want to say is, everything's only right for me. I don't have a certainty, right? It wouldn't, like, from the inside, he'd be like, I'm not certain at all. That's why it's good for me, and what's good for you is good for you. But the conservative would say, this is good.
Yeah, just what strikes me though, like, and I kind of, as much as I really agree with what you said, what strikes me a little bit about people who are relativists are like simple relativists. I'm talking like really low level relativists, like first year college. I took an intro to politics and philosophy course level, a
And
relativist,
don't forget anthropology.
and anthropology class. Uh, this kind of relativist they almost seem to ride on a weird kind of certainty. This is good for me, right? I mean, how do you know that's good for you? Right.
I
This
think
is
their
good.
positions are just completely unexamined.
Yeah, I know.
They have no idea what they're up to.
Yeah.
It's a completely unexamined and self-contradictory position. That it's I mean, if you really examine it like that, I just wonder if you're thinking too much about this. Actually,
I think so too.
In the sense that, like, you're right that their position is certain in its self-contradictory unexaminedness, but for them, it's all about, well, I don't know.
True.
I don't know. What do you know? What's good for you? What's good for me?
It does seem more about the grid than it does about certainty, doesn't it? Like maintaining the grid. Like
keep off of my
boundaries.
square. You keep off of my square. I keep off of your square. That's all there is, man. That's all there is to it. And that's the end of the story. See ya.
So, not to drive this out too much longer, but that is a type of certainty. Because under the conservative structure, you have to be in line with something. You can you can fail to be a man. Under conservative guidelines, but in liberal terms, we have our Max Stirner. Strive to be a man. What else could you be?
Yeah.
I can be certain that I am on the right path, essentially by saying there is no right path. That sounds very contradictory.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying, right? Like, I mean, you're right. That's it. Exactly. That's exactly it. Let me try to let me take the next step in the chess game here. Okay, checkmate. By saying that I think the kind of certainty he's thinking about is not that.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna have to bluntly say it. He thinks. I mean, like, he thinks of that grid, the liberal grid, as basically keeping that certainty at a distance. That the conservative kind of certainty. Although you're right, when you examine the liberal, I mean, this is what's kind of contradictory about the liberal positions, because they want to get off saying, well, there is no certainty. What do you know, man? And yet they have to make that grid, right? This is what I think frightens them. This is why you get those kind of idiot, silly cultural relativists. But they don't know it, right? And they have to make the grid, and they have to make pronouncements about the world, but they're scared to. They're really just out and out frightened to do it. They don't like to do it, but they have to. And this is where I actually have sympathy for conservatism, right? There has to be a grid, at the very least. We can't just throw away the grid, or the traffic light, as you might picture it. I don't know. Yeah, so I think you're both right. The liberal position is contradictory in that sense. I just don't think that's what Fleming is thinking here.
Stereotypical liberal position, anyway.
The stereotypical liberal position. It seems like they're, I mean, like, wouldn't he be the first one to say, the liberal position is the good position to be in. It's the one in the center, right? You got a grid, which is conservative, and you got the open spaces, which is kind of, I don't know, whatever, man, whatever. And then that's your world, right? And so, I know, to be honest, I'm kind of there with him a little bit. Like, I'm kind of like, you know what? Yeah, I don't know. I hesitate to pin down the world like a conservative would, right? I mean, I'm the first one that would be like, yeah, this is still open to discussion. It's still open to debate whether this is good or not. And, eventually but my premise would be I want to come to a consensus somehow, some way. But I would never say, well, we've decided it now until the end of time. And by the way, that is a long time. Like, so in other words, for 70 quadrillion years, yes, homosexuality has been declared good. Right? I mean, like, it just sounds ludicrous to say. So, like, we can keep these things open. And, I don't know. It's going to sound awfully subjective, the world that I'm talking about, but it kind of reminds me of the way that objectivity is viewed in science. It's objective because we take it as objective, because we believe there's an answer. And the same way we talked about finding meaning in life, too. I mean, like, the objectivity we talked about in a meaningful life isn't built into the universe, and yet it still can be. And because I think the subjective self reaches out to an objective world,
Mm.
and you include it as part of yourself. So, I mean, there's a little bit of breathing room here. I want to take this really bizarre position between like absolute and then only subjectivity. There's something there. I think there's something worth saving here.
Mm.
And as weird as that sounds. And I think Fleming's there too. I want to give him a break. Really want to give him a break.
I think he probably might be there too. It's
just
hard
can't
to get
believe-
where he is.
Well, I just can't. I mean, I get it. Like, I read this chapter and I was like, what? What are you talking about? Walk away from the chessboard just because we can't get an answer? Just because we can't absolutely win the game? What are you, nuts? Okay, I have to admit, that was my first reaction. I didn't like it at all. But that can't be it. That
Yeah.
can't be it.
In a weird way, it'd be kind of interesting in the sense that, in the same way Wittgenstein's book explodes at the end, right? That would mean his book could explode at the end, because what has he been doing the whole time, right?
Right.
Arguing. It is kind of cute in that way, if that's what he's trying to do.
That is kind of funny. So, why don't we stop it there? And anything, I'm going to ask you, anything in this book that particularly stood out to you as interesting? I will say mine first to give you guys a chance.
Oh, sure.
I think, Jesse, you're going to resonate with me on one of the ones. I thought was interesting was that this... I loved his talk about how growing up involves gaining a sense of power over the world, and that when you're a child, the world is enchanted because you don't have power over it. The tree in your backyard feels like the awesomest tree in the universe. It's cool and great. You can never get enough of looking at it. But when you grow up, you gain power and control, and you lose that enchantment. You begin to know, well, that tree didn't have to be there. My parents didn't have to be here. It's a frightening thought. It's almost horrific, right? You lose that enchantment, and when you gain a different perspective on the world, and you can see that things don't have to be the way they are. And I think it's more than just disenchanting. It's frightening, at least to me. So I really like this talk about growing up and enchantment of the world, and why you can't go back to being a child, because you just know you know it. You found it out. It doesn't have to be this way. Just like when you walk into a hotel and you're like, man, this room rocks, and then you walk back to your place and I'm like, this pit again. But like, it's because you made it. Right? You just look at the faults and you're like, oh God, it didn't have to be like this. Oh, stupid. Right? I mean, like, part of that is, and like why other people's food tastes better. You're like, wow, this is great, and then you taste your own, you're like, but you concentrate on that error like George Lucas does when he looks at Star Wars. Right? Everyone else is looking at Star Wars like a child. Wow, Star Wars. All the time he's looking like, wow, we really needed a Jar Jar in there. No, George, we didn't need a CG character in Jabba's palace. That was not what we were looking for. You totally didn't get it. Like, but again, he was the creator, so he's like, man, I really wanted to add that CG character in Jabba's palace. Yeah. So I think that really stuck me. It's this kind of, I don't know, it's a very depressing view of the world, to be perfectly honest. It reminds me of Schopenhauer a little bit, but.
Yeah. You know what, like, just like recently too, like just having gone through Golden Week here in Japan, it's just kind of a truth I don't want to accept, which is like the fact that my Golden Week feels extra special good because I have to go back to work. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to accept that truth. I want to think of, like, if Golden Week lasted the entire year, I would be like riding high, like everyday vacation, woohoo! But like, I just don't want to accept the fact that like if Golden Week lasted for like 2 months, I would just be like, whatever.
Yeah, right. Disenchanted with the Golden Week.
Yeah. It would just become like my project, like the eternal Golden Week. It would cease to lose any coolness.
Oh, that's okay. If it makes you feel better, my Golden Week lasts for 4 months.
Oh.
Because my Golden Week is one of the busiest times of the year.
That's a happy Golden Week. So,
Golden Week by different terms, but
this is one thing I thought was neat. I have another one, but anyone else want to say something else they thought was neat in this book that was interesting that got your attention?
Really, this is very shallow, admittedly.
Shallow is welcome.
What really caught my attention is how he seems to have the perfect, Taiken and the perfect little episodes for proving his points. The story with the raccoon, the even better story with the large plastic play structures.
Ah, yes.
I honestly find it difficult to believe that actually happened.
I think he did too. It's like, what? You took my stuff? All right. Yeah. I like his stories. I think like Schopenhauer was good at this too. He was always good at mixing a good metaphor or story, and which is why I enjoyed reading Schopenhauer so much. And any good writer should use techniques like that, I think. Yeah, I enjoyed that definitely.
Definitely. I want to throw in a small point too right now. Anyway, I talked with you about this, Dustin, but like I really like the fact that like I think in a weird way like so throughout the book he attacks a series of large figures in philosophy, including Sartre, Freud, Marx, and Michel Foucault. Right, but it's interesting in the sense that like you could almost read this book as a retooling of all of their ideas put together, though. Jean-Paul Sartre, with his idea of man seeking to transcend and failing, right? Trying to get above and below our facticity with our trying to transcend our facticity or becoming facticity. You could read Freud back in this. Freud talked about the reality principle, how like we need some pushback, otherwise what we're doing doesn't feel real, right? Just like when something is on your projects, like it doesn't have that feeling of reality he talked about where it does outside of your projects. Marx, right? He rags on Marx, but like, what is the end of the last section? But kind of a weird restatement of, people of the world, like philosophers of the world have tried to interpret the world, but the point has been to change it.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of an interesting retooling of Marx. Michel Foucault, right? The relationship between knowledge and power. This is like straight through this book, all about knowledge and power. It's a kind of a nice cutting and shaving and critiquing and putting all these guys together, along with, of course, Wittgenstein. I mean, who could ignore Wittgenstein throughout the whole thing, too?
Yeah, I'd like to take a closer examination, actually, of each one of those and how they fit in here. Hopefully, I don't know if I can get time to do that later, but definitely agree with that. Especially Jean-Paul Sartre, I thought that was interesting. I want to kind of compare Freud too with this little bit.
Yeah, there could be more Freud stuff.
There could be more Freud going on here.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And in keeping with that, I really did like how he compared the way we look at our projects and the world. And I thought this mixed in good with Charles Taylor, because when you have a project, you begin to see everything around you as an instrument to that project. So the microphone just becomes something you put in front of you and you talk through to get your video out. The computer becomes an instrument by which you send the video to the YouTube servers or something, right? That's all you begin to see it as. Like, it just becomes instrumental. Everything becomes instrumental to you. And in a way, the world kind of starts to, I don't know, hide from you in a certain way. You don't see the tree anymore. You see the tree because it has shade or whatever you see, right? You see the tree because it's made of timber or wood, and then you're going to cut that up. You begin to lose part of the world, and then art, his relation to that is seeing things only via instrumentality is contrasted with art, which allows you, again, to see the world, let's say it in weird Schopenhauer ways, willlessly. Yes, without a will, but more accurately, you would say, allows you to see the world from more perspectives, which would be a Nietzschean way to put it, which I like much better, which is to say, well, yeah, that's a microphone, but look at it. Look, it's really interesting. What's the history behind it? Look at how it feels, the texture, the microphoniness of it or something. Or look at how, I mean, you could see your computer as a piece of art or anything, right? I mean, you could see it in all these different ways. And that's what art opens you up to. It saves you from instrumental reason. Mm-hmm. And so, like, you have to kind of keep your balance between each one of these two things to lead a good life. And art really does have a kind of a very great, I think, a very good purpose in this schema of the universe. So I like that. It's very strangely Schopenhauer. Like, I like how his insane theory of art gets saved by, of all people, Bruce Fleming. All right, sure, why not? Yes, the will-less world. Sure, yeah, I really like this theory of art. Actually, it's interesting. No,
Mhm.
yes, no,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, definitely, definitely.
And not so shallow, still kind of shallow, but I did one thing I found very it was kind of jarring when he first goes into it. He starts telling you just how arbitrary everything in your life is, and then that kind of runs as like a thread throughout the entire your book. And then I think it's a scary realization to come to, but it's also a very important and powerful realization. And he got across so clear. I think that's one of the major. If that's all you get, you only get one thing in the book. Probably that might be the thing you want.
And like in tandem with that, isn't it kind of interesting how he constantly makes you think about like everyone's like trying to make the world intelligible, like this and this and this, but he's like so many things in the world, like look at all the conflicts in the world, but he's like look at all the things that don't conflict. Right, like your sense of humor versus the construction of a chair or something, right? There's just so many things in the world, like you're never going to be able to encapsulate this whole thing.
Now, with all fairness, those two do conflict. I do not find the construction of a chair humorous.
Okay, granted. You can make that connection, right, somehow. It's just weird because like you start using your imagination, you begin to see like, yeah, there's like a lot of just things that are so different from each other that they didn't even come into contact. You don't even know how to put them into contact, right? I mean, like I don't know, pleasantness and a bee or something like you'd be like, what are we talking about? We don't even know. I mean, how on earth do we connect these things? Maybe Socrates could.
Sounds like something Socrates would talk about, actually.
Yeah, it does. It does. So I like that. He's constantly reminding you of just how big the world is. Yeah, definitely like that. Definitely like that.
Yes.
And how random it is.
You want to focus on a very small, arbitrary patch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got your little part.
You're so ignorant of everything below that path, yeah.
Yeah. And, I guess we should probably talk about the final mystical moment we're supposed to have at the end, right?
Yeah.
At the end of Section 7, we're supposed to realize, right, that, we're never going to be able to dig our way out of the universe, right? We're always going to be kept afloat by X, something, the water, by whatever it is. It's just going to be what keeps us afloat, and it just simply can't really, I don't know, what is it? You can't pin it down, or you can't even speak of it, maybe in a sense that a picture can't talk about its own. You can only display its structure, as opposed to, or what was it? I forget. Wittgenstein saved me. Or is it a picture cannot depict its pictorial form, it displays it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, well, in a kind of it's a very kind of tortured metaphor here, but in the same way, like you're never going to be able to get to rock bottom, right? Science is always going to be on something, whether it's energy or whatever. We're never going to get outside of it, but there is something there, whatever the necessary it is that we, the contingent, float on. Who knows what that is? That's the mystical or the holy, and that's what we float on, and that's what makes the universe go. I think was the mystical moment we're supposed to have at the end, right? That there's something out there.
Yeah.
That we just can't talk about.
Yeah. And it's kind of we are part of that. Yeah. Of that whole. It's connected to us through the whole. We are parts of the whole. I think that's supposed to be what you arrive at.
It flows through us, unites us,
binds us.
Well, it all depends on your midichlorian count.
Yeah, right. Well, not anymore, right? Only a couple of elite people in a big tower on Coruscant can do that. Coruscant? Okay, cuts. Okay, so let's cut right there, and we'll be back again for more TPS later. Thanks for putting up with us this long. Please go out and get yourself a copy of this book. Bruce Fleming deserves much more fame than he has.
Yes.
Much more fame. He's actually a very, very interesting man. Take my word on it, please. If one thing, just please buy the book. Come on, it's interesting.
Oh yeah.
All right. That's all. Anyone else have anything to say?
Well, of course, check out the book. Look, if you haven't, and if you have, or even if you haven't, comments. We always like your comments.
Yeah, comment. We all know debating doesn't get anywhere. It's just like playing a chess game that never ends. But write your comment anyway, whatever. So,
A lot it'll prove.
I like looking down on the comments from my seat of Mount Olympus.
yeah, we're up from Mount Olympus. Like, oh, I saw that comment coming a mile away. All right. So thanks, everyone, and see you next time.